We take a trip each year to somewhere in the country, and we noticed that we were hunting over a lot of rice field, along that Mississippi Delta. And so Tommy, he's the brains behind everything, and he did a lot of research and found that North Carolina historically grew rice. It was the #1 cash crop above cotton and tobacco for North and South Carolina. So we plant our rice dry, so in a dry field, and then once it gets about this tall, then we start chasing the water on it. Okay. And we'll chase the water as the plant grows. And then when it's fully grown and ready to harvest, and that'll be determined based by moisture content in the seed head. So if we think it's getting close, then we'll drain the water, and it needs to dry for about 4 to 5 days, depending on the weather. And then once the field's dry enough and the moisture content is right, then we can get in with our combine. So it's mechanically harvested. Okay. So this is Carolina Gold right here. Part of the reason it gets its name is you see that nice golden color. As the story goes, they traded boat repairs for 2 casts of rice. And that's the first documented case of rice coming to the Americas, north or south, and the Caribbean. So think about that. And then somewhere around 1850, some farmers noticed that the rice got longer just by natural hybridization. And so they captured that rice seed, and they grew what we now call Santee Gold long grain. But rice farming was lost in North Carolina and, around 1900. You had a couple of things happen. You had the emancipation of slavery, so the labor force and the knowledge, because they're really the ones that had the knowledge of how to farm rice. But then also you had some storms in North Carolina, and then mechanized farming, with the Industrial Revolution. All of a sudden you had tractors. So old wet land and bogs that they were only good for growing rice, and they could get water off of it with mechanized farming equipment. And so that, other crops happened. And then so what happened is, the rice culture moved west and kind of settled in the Mississippi Delta, in Mississippi, Louisiana, Missouri, Arkansas, parts of Texas. Yeah, over there where that big tree is, the 8-inch well that goes down 360 feet, and it can push about 700 gallons a minute. So we have a pipe that runs down this road and all the way to here to the kind of the center area. And then we split it off. We have it going into that field, we have it going into the canal, we have it coming out into these fields, and this one is, I was talking about recycling the water. That helps us recycle the water without having to, to run the well. So as long as we have water in the ditches, we can cut her on, and there's actually a float system there, kind of like your toilet bowl. And when it gets to a certain level, it goes up and shuts her off, and then if it drops down, then she cut her back on.
It's very subjective of when to take water off, very subjective of when to harvest, because you're going to have, even in just a single field, you're going to have everything from over dry to fully immature. Subjective thing is also for when you pull water, because if you waited for the crop to be dry, if we left water on it, we would get better yield. So then you say, well, damn, why don't you just leave the water on? Well, because if you leave the water on, then it's about 5 days from the time we take the water off before we get it to dry enough to where the equipment will stand up and not get stuck. So, because like right now, the plant is still consuming water at a pretty high rate. All right, so if you look, you see how it's starting to yellow up? We call that firing up, right? And that's where it's effectively running out of moisture. The plant's dying. You know what I mean? It's done what it's supposed to do, and it's created its seed head, right? And it's drying down. If we were to wait for that to get yellow all the way to the top, then the plant would no longer be consuming water, and it would get really difficult to dry this soil out. Right now, we're playing the curve of the plant's still consuming water at a pretty crazy rate, and the soil is wet. I mean, this keep in mind, yesterday this was knee deep right here, and yet today, I mean, I'm mucky, but I'm not actually. Look, I mean, I have no mud on my boots. It's pretty crazy, really, isn't it? But the plants themselves are like a sponge. They're sucking this water right out of here, and we'll be able to get in here sooner than you'd think. Every bit of that comes from one seed. So you think like celery, like if you're buying at the grocery store, you imagine that it's this clump,
right,
and it produces all of this. And you see these are secondary seeds that are going to come out later. This is what the ducks will eat. That'll never see a combine. We'll only come in and cut this. The raccoon, this stuff that's behind, will naturally mature, and then all the wildlife will live their best life. There's nobody we can call to ask for help.
right.
There's no ag extension agent that can help us. There's no anything. We are the experts, unfortunately. And as such, we have to do our own agricultural research. So in a partnership with NC State and the New and Emerging Crops program, they provide us technical resources where we can run our own tests. So if you look beginning here all the way to this end, when we go by, I want you to look at all the rows, the dividers, okay? And then when we get to the other end, you'll look down, you're gonna see all the columns, and there's little rectangles. Each of those rectangles is an agricultural test plot, okay, that we've done for Carolina Gold rice and for Santee Gold long grain rice, our two varieties that we grow, where we're looking at things like nutrition level, timing of flood, what kind of fungicide to use on it to get the highest quality grain, plant density, all kinds of stuff that we look at every year. And we do what's called a design of experiments every year, and we'll do 1,000 trials a year, and then we'll compile the data at the end of the year. And this is part of what fuels our intellectual machine of how to grow a better crop next year, how to grow a better crop next year, year after that, year after that. And so every year we're iterating and learning so that ultimately we can just get better at it.
Everything you see here is a rice mill-ish. They do not make a rice mill. The majority of the rice that you're gonna get, except for Tidewater Grain rice, is gonna be commodity rice, which is very easy to mill. The majority of things you see here are all been heavily modified to hot rods. These are our grain bins. This is all computer monitored. It goes right to my phone. It doesn't care if it's 4 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon or Sunday or I'm in church. It is telling us constantly what the moisture is, the humidity, the temperature inside the grain bins, temperature outside, the ambient temperature inside. It tells us our heights and all that. Blue auger, that's on the side of the building, dumping into there. That shoots across and lands in that grain bin there, which then feeds the mill. This here is our day tank. This has a chain drag system. This is gravity feeding into the bottom. The chain drag will bring that up and into the building. When this starts to run low, the switch will turn on again. There's a light, and it kind of lets me know that, hey, we're getting low here. And automatically it'll start feeding this chain drag and pulling rice out of the day bin again. It's all patty rice. And it goes into this hopper here. And this is where it starts the milling process. This table here is shaking in this direction like this. So you notice on the top here you have screens. You have your larger holes on the top and just the appropriate amount of small holes on the bottom to it's just going to give you the patty rice. So everything that is not patty rice, straw and just dirt or whatever, will fall through this first mesh screen, come out this chute, and there's usually two big rolling carts here, like kind of like wheelbarrows. The good rice will come down to this bottom level here, and I should say patty rice, come to this bottom level here and start its process through the cleaning process. So now it's all been cleaned. You get your patty rice, and it's still got the husk on it. So imagine like a tiny piece of corn. That'll come down through here. Now this is a food grade magnet. Let me show you something really. So go ahead and pull that off.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Wow.
Yeah. So anything that a guy who's driving the combine jumps out of the combine, drops his pocket knife in the field. Well, you don't want that in a bag of rice, and you don't want that going through these elevators. So that food grade magnet catches everything. But I was saying that everything has been hot rodded because commodity rice is so easy to mill, and Carolina Gold rice is not. It's like a tumbleweed, and you got 5 pieces of rice in that tumbleweed. Well, how do you separate that? So you see these awns?
Yeah.
Now imagine hundreds of pieces of rice. That's going to start tumbling and become hateful to get through these screens. So this fan will take some of the dirt and alleviate some of that. Our elevators are all on buckets. We treat our rice very delicately, and that big conveyor out there, traditionally everything's done with an auger, and it's like a big screw. Problem is you're going to wind up with a lot more broken rice. These elevators will bring it up to the top here, where it'll come down into this chute and start loading our hopper here. That is loading my straight patty rice, so it still has the husk on it. It's still brown rice at that point. Everything is as it came out of the field. It's just been, all the debris has been removed.
Right.
And this is our husker. So you have these two wheels, which are counter-rotating, and they're just kissing. You can see they're just kissing, and they're counter-rotating, so it's like arm burn. So they're just touching and peeling away that husk. You'll end up with this husk. So all the rice has been removed. So you got brown rice coming, everything's coming out as brown, and the husk is getting evacuated through air pressure. So everything here works on air pressure. So the denser stuff, of course, is going to fall down low. The lighter stuff is going to get fluffed and brought out. And our rice is more dense. It's falling down into here. The rice is running across, going up through here, going up through here, and falling down from this elevator, now falling down onto my gravity table. Our gravity table is shaking in this direction like this. The denser will fall to one side, the lighter will fall to the other. And there's 3 chambers here, 1, 2, and 3. The good rice that has been dehusked and is ready to go, if you just wanted to eat brown rice, will go to one side. Everything that's iffy will get recycled through the system again and give it a second try. Everything that's, I don't like it, will then restart the entire process again. Let's come down to here, which will bring us to where the bran is removed. A lot of commodity rice, they'll bleach the rice. We don't do that. We tumble it. Now, it's removing the bran. That's what gives the rice the brownness. The bran is falling into here and getting evacuated through those holes with air pressure again. Buckets will carry it up through here. We're going to start its journey down through here and fall into this indented cylinder. So it's like a golf ball. So there's dimples reversed, and everything that's broken will fall into those dimples. And as it's tumbling, it's kind of sliding down this way, and the midlands will go into a separate hopper. So it's coming down this tube. Our whole grains, which is a full piece of rice unbroken, will come into here, and then another elevator system will carry it up to these tanks here. And that's our holding tanks for the day. Midlands are getting dropped into here and filling this hopper. Over here, this structure to the left here is where bulk bags would be, and we'll have bran coming out of here. Now our bran is super, well, brown rice, super nutritious. We've removed it, but what are we gonna do with it? You can't waste it. That's the terrible thing to do. So our cattle farmers, a gentleman by the name of Pete Anderson, who's on the board of North Carolina Department of Ag Cattle Board, started feeding this to his cows. And he's getting Wagyu marbling in just at a fraction of the cost to him. He came in and he tried it, and he came back about 3 weeks later after he went through the bag, and he gets out of his truck. He calls me. He says, "Hey, you got any more bran?" I said, "Sure, come by." He gets out of his truck and he's walking like this. I said, "Pete, what happened? You all right? You hurt yourself?" he said, I don't know if I can continue to buy brand. And I said, well, it's all right. If it didn't work for you, it's fine. He goes, no. He goes, you see the way I'm walking? I said, yeah. And this is a true story. Swear on my mother. And he says, the cows have become so accustomed to seeing me walking out with buckets instead of dumping the big satchels that he usually would feed. They walk out with buckets. They love the brand so much that they're rushing the gates. Their heads are over the gate and their feet are, they can't get close enough. They're stepping on his toes. He has done all this type of research on it, sent it in for testing. It's higher in the right proteins, lower in the wrong proteins, because there are plus and minuses to proteins, saturated fats and all that. And it's really done well for him. So he started talking about it at conferences, cattleman conferences. And now I haven't milled any rice from this year's harvest. This year's harvest hasn't even started. I've already sold all our brand.